Okay, good evening, everybody. It is 7 o'clock, so we'll go ahead and get started. Tonight we'll be talking about backcountry nutrition. My name is Pam Bond. I am a board member for the Trails Association and also a crew leader. Tom?
And I'm a board member and a crew leader as well.
Awesome. All right. Well, thanks everybody for coming tonight. And just a few housekeeping things. I think you should all be muted. And we're going to go through the presentation and then just take questions at the end. So be thinking about those, and we'll take those when we're all finished up. To get started, we'll just talk a little bit about what the Idaho Trails Association is. If you aren't familiar with our organization, we were founded in 2010, and our mission is really just to keep our hiking trails open for all. And we do that by doing a lot of trail maintenance, using traditional trail tools like crosscut saws and Pulaskis. Obviously, things like this, education and awareness about how to respectfully play in our wild places, and then advocacy and protection. You know, we try and stay in tune with what's happening on our public lands in Idaho. The best thing that you can do to support the Trails Association is join us for a project. This year, I think we have a whopping 80 some different projects that you can sign up for, everything from a single day project all the way up to our week-long I call them vacation projects. So I call them vacations because some of our projects, they're supported with a camp cook, and you get done with a long hard day and you have hors d'oeuvres sitting there waiting for you, and they're cooking your meals. I'll do anything if somebody will cook me dinner. And so those were some of my favorites. We also have some more special programs like Women in the Wild, where we have, women teaching other women about doing trail work. Those are super fun. Youth project for our kind of high school age volunteers, work with different universities. We're starting to work with veteran groups. We have family friendly projects. And I think now we're in our second or third year of doing this backpacking 101. We're really helping people understand how to get into backpacking and even go on a backpacking trip with them. And yeah, absolutely no experience is required to just start with us. We'll teach you everything you would need to know. Even as a crew leader, we're always learning things. So that's kind of one of the fun things about doing trail projects. You're always learning things out there. Just to let you know about a couple things going on. So right now, our Pack Your Summer online auction is open. So go out to our website or Facebook or Instagram to get details for that. Bidding is open now until the end of the month. Lots of cool packages and different items on there. So go out and take a look at those. And then coming up June 3rd is the Breakfast out at Eagle Island State Park. So if you're in kind of the Treasure Valley area, you can go out, and I think they have all sorts of different groups out there and different activities for all ages, just to kind of see what's happening in the recreation world down here. All right, with that, I will hand it over to Tom.
Well, thank you, Pam. Okay, first, start with a bit of a disclaimer. The disclaimer is that talking about food and different diet plans and that kind of thing can be fairly controversial. So what Pam and I have done, we've both been into this for quite some time because we do very long hikes. So this talk is primarily focused on week-longs. One of the things you may have noticed from Pam's slide, for the first time ever this year, ITA has a 3-week wilderness immersion project. And we're going to fly a group of 8 people into the Frank Church Wilderness, wish them good luck, turn them loose, and come back and fly them out 3 weeks later. And so they're going to have the food that they need to be able to survive comfortably out there in the wilderness. So this is based on research we've done, and it's primarily using 2 really good sites. One is Backcountry Foodie. It's a for-pay service, but it's really excellent. And another one that one of our volunteers mentioned to us, and I didn't know about this one, but I've spent hours now looking at YouTube videos from Gear Skeptic. Really a fantastic site. So we've done a lot of research looking at those places, and also based on lots of miles, lots of meals that we've had to prepare out in the backcountry. And so those are the bases for what we're going to talk about tonight. So first, we'll talk about how much food, then we'll talk about what kind of food, strategies for when to eat, because not only what you eat, you have to know when to eat and how much. Then food prep and planning, and finally those resources. So we'll give you some links at the end. So Pam, let's talk about how much. So a lot of people, you've all heard this thing about 2 pounds per person per day, sort of an old saw. Well, the fact is, you don't get energy from a pound. You get energy from the food, from the fuel. So we're going to be talking about calories. That's how you measure the amount of fuel you're going to receive. And again, there's some general guidelines, but for moderate backpacking, we're not talking about climbing. We're not talking about climbing Mount Everest. We're talking about moderate backpacking trips. They say men 4,000 calories a day, women 3,500 calories a day. I can tell you that Backcountry Foodie, again, that paid service, has a really neat program that you can use. You enter a whole bunch of information about yourself and your trip and your pack and the terrain and the weather and the altitude, and it'll give you an estimate of how many calories you'll need. For example, I just did that for a project I'm going to be on, and it said I needed 4,600 calories because it's going to be a little more difficult. So it really depends on how far you're going. If you're going to be hiking more than 8 hours a day, you probably need more than 4,000. If 2 hours a day, less. So again, this is an approximation, and you'll have a much better feel for that when you're planning your trip, because you're going to be knowing how far you're going and how fast you'll be going. But again, it's not weight-based. It's based on energy, the amount of fuel you're going to get. Go ahead, Pam. Then we talk about what kind of food. We're going to have lots of technical facts about carbs and proteins and fats and carb protein ratios and all this kind of stuff to give you an estimate of how many grams of carbs you need and all of that. So there's going to be lots of information. But the fact of the matter is, the food that you bring has to be something you're willing to eat. And this might seem intuitively obvious, but I can tell you on some really big climbing trips that I've been on, it's been really hard to eat. Same thing with some really hard backpacking trips. You have a tendency to lose your appetite. So you have to at least start with stuff you'll eat under normal conditions. So really, after all of the math is done and the adding and subtracting and the buying and all that kind of thing, pick stuff you like. The second thing is calorie and nutrient dense foods. You want to have stuff that has more bang for the buck. And we're using calories per gram as a measure. Some people use ounces per gram. Calories per ounce. We're using calories per gram. I like it because it's easy. Anything over 4 is okay. Anything over 5 is pretty good. Anything over 6 is really great. And where do you get that from? You get it right off of the nutrition label on the meal that you're preparing. So for example, if you have Ritz crackers, it'll tell you how many calories per gram you're getting with a Ritz cracker. Same thing with tuna or walnuts or whatever. Look at the nutrition label and it will tell you how many calories per gram you're getting. The next thing is you want compact and resilient food. Some people say, what does that mean, resilient? What it means is you're not going to bring a bag of Fritos and I love Fritos on the trail. Sometimes when I'm out for a long time, I have a real hanker. I wish somebody would fly over and drop a bag of Fritos, but they don't pack well. And so what we mean by resilient foods, it's got to be something that's tough enough to shove in your backpack day after day after day. The other thing is it needs to be compact. You don't want something that's a great big fluffy thing. They used to make some freeze-dried dinners that look like a bag of potato chips because they're a big puffy bag in their package. The other thing is you want something that won't spoil. I'm sure we've all been on trips where you have some cheese that becomes a science experiment after about 2 days. So pick things that won't spoil. Next, easy to prepare. And I'm an advocate of no cooking. I don't cook anything in my pot. I boil water. And Pam can talk to you later if you have an interest about cold soaking. So you don't even have to have hot water, just a way to save fuel. Fuel is heavy. And so you don't, I was on a trip last year with somebody that brought some beans that he had to cook for over a half an hour. That was, it was painful to watch. So anyway, you want stuff that's easy to prepare. And I do a lot for my entrees at night. I do freeze-dried dinner, so I pour the water in the pouch. Pam makes a lot of her own food, but the same thing, pours the hot water in the pouch. And that's really easy. No bowls, no pots to clean, that kind of thing. So that's what we mean by easy to prepare. And then balanced. Balanced means that it has to be have the correct nutrients. So now we're going to talk about nutrients in this next slide. So first we're going to talk about carbs. Carbohydrates are often called the fuel food. Carbs, when you eat a carb, it will eventually, through the digestive process, become glycogen in your blood, and the glycogen provides the fuel to your muscles. And there is a general guideline that about 60% of your daily intake comes from carbs. If you are an advocate of the gear skeptic, he proposes a little lower number for carbs, a little higher number for fats. The reason is that carbs have 4 calories per gram of carbohydrate. Fats have 9 calories per gram. The advantage of carbs, they're digested faster. They provide faster energy. In fact, that can become a problem we'll talk about in a moment. But let's just say that about 60% of the daily intake is going to be carbs. And here's some guidelines that are provided: 2.3 to 4.5 grams of carbs per pound of body weight. You'll notice we're going between SAE and metric, but it's easier to understand here rather than having it in kilograms. So 2.3 to 4.5. What this is a range that's provided for endurance athletes. And if you're out there doing a really tough, like last year, Pam was doing the PCT, hauling a heavy pack, going way too fast and way too far. and so there you're up towards the 4.5. If you're on an ITA backpack trip, generally, especially ones that are rated more moderate, you'll be down towards the other end of the range. Backpacking is an endurance sport and needs endurance nutrition, but it varies in its difficulty. So as an example, if you're a 140-pound person, you need anywhere between, you could see the numbers, roughly 300 to 600 grams. If you're 200 like me, 460 to 900 grams of carbohydrates. That's not easy to do. Getting 900 grams of carbs or 630 isn't easy to do. So Pam's going to show you a really slick spreadsheet a little while later. And there's a number of places you can go to get information on how many grams of carbs you get from the food you eat. One's the nutrition label, but others, like the Gear Skeptic, have put those into some really nifty tables that make it easier to do the math. The other thing about carbs, they come in two types. One is simple carbs, that's sugar. Another is complex carbs, like whole grains. What the difference is, simple carbs get absorbed in your system within about a half an hour. They're quickly digested. They provide quick energy. The problem with simple carbs is after about an hour, the energy starts to go in the other direction pretty abruptly, and you can actually get a dip. So you get below your baseline that you started. And so you can use simple carbs for quick energy, but then you need complex carbs to sustain the energy. So a complex carb, once you eat a complex carb, let's say that you have granola for breakfast, an hour to an hour and a half after breakfast, you're starting to get the benefit of that complex carb. If you put some raisins in your granola when you were eating breakfast, you're going to have some simple sugars, so you're going to get that burst right out of the gate. So the idea here, a lot of people think, ooh, you have to cut out totally the simple carbs, no sugar. That's not true. What you want is you want a tandem team here. You want the simple sugars, the simple carbs to get you going really, really well. Not too many, but you have enough that you can get going. Then you get the complex carbs that will last out for about 3 hours. And then after that, you'll be using fats to provide energy over the longer term. So anyway, simple carbs, you need some of those. Complex carbs, you need some of those too. Okay, next. And then lots of information about how much can you digest at one time. And the general information is about 60 grams of carb in a meal. And a meal, you know, that can be digested in an hour approximately. And so you can do a meal, or then after your meal, and frankly, when I do breakfast, I get about 100 grams of carbs because it's in with a bunch of other stuff. And can I utilize all of that? You know, maybe not, but I'm getting a lot of other benefits. And then after I have breakfast, then I start to snack. We had an old adage in the climbing community: after breakfast, you start lunch, and you continue to eat lunch until you start having dinner. And so what that means is you eat all day long. So here you can see some examples of 30 grams. That would be a really good snack after an hour, hour and a half after your breakfast. So an energy bar, some dried fruit, etc. And then the 60 grams could be that would be that first one, the creamy mac and cheese, that could be a dinner. The oats, dried fruit and nuts, that could be a breakfast. Ramen and parm and spices. But again, you'll get that information off of the food labels on the food that you're bringing. Okay, next, Pam. An interesting thing about carbs is, again, that's the fuel food, but carbs work okay by themselves, but they work a whole lot better with protein. Protein we need for rebuilding and building muscle tissue. That's what the protein does. It helps rebuild those muscles that you've been using all day long. And the general rule is somewhere in the 20% daily intake of your daily calorie intake. The same thing with carbs. Proteins give you about 4 calories per gram. And the range can be a half a gram to 7/10 of a gram per pound of body weight, all the way up to very active athletes will go all the way up to 9/10 of a gram per pound of body weight. But again, here's our 140 person and our 200 pound person. and you can see the range of protein. Here's the trick with protein. Protein helps with the assimilation of carbs in your digestive system. So if you eat a lot of carbs for breakfast, but no protein, you will assimilate those carbs. If you eat protein with the carbs at breakfast, you'll get almost a 40% better assimilation of your carbohydrates. And so what the sports people are now telling us is you should have a carb to protein ratio of 3 to 4 to 1. And so what I wanted to leave you with here is when you're putting together your plan for your breakfast and your snacks all day long, you want to have carbs, simple carbs, complex carbs, and protein. And make that meal so that the ratio is 3 or 4 to 1 carbs to protein. Now, you don't have to find a single food that makes that ratio. So, for example, sometimes when I do my breakfast of granola, I'll be too light on the protein. And so what I'll do is I'll have some Oberto bacon, dried bacon, and so it pumps up the protein, so I get up to a 3 or 4 to 1 ratio. So, and when it all goes in your stomach doesn't know where it came from. It just knows that, aha, here's all this protein, or excuse me, all these carbs, and now I've got the right amount of protein with it, and I'll do a better job of absorbing it. Protein, there's a limit on how much you can do at a time, 20 to 30 grams of protein per meal or snack. And here's some examples. Again, you'll find this stuff in the nutrition labels, but the thing that's important about that protein is that it gets absorbed normally at a rate of about 10 grams per hour. So if you get 20 grams of protein, it's going to take 2 hours for that to get assimilated. And similarly, 3 hours if you do 30. So just to give you some sort of general feel for how fast this stuff works in your system. Okay, next, Pam. Fats. They have a really bad name. A lot of us are trained that we don't like fats. Well, there's good fats. And what we're talking about here is, I'll give you a statistic I found really interesting. There was a study done of AT hikers, Appalachian Trail hikers. The average is it takes about 165 days to the Appalachian Trail. Hikers that do the Appalachian Trail on average lose 30 pounds. They have a deficit of over 100,000 calories in their diet over that 165 days. That's about 600 calories a day. And so when now we're not going to be doing the AT on an ITA project, not even our 3-week project, but we are going to be out there and we're going to be burning more calories than we're eating. And so I guess what I'm trying to say is the fat that you eat out there on a backpack is not necessarily going to go to your posterior. It's going to be burned up. So about 20% daily intake. Again, the gear skeptic, he pushes a little higher number than that, but the thing that is important about fats, carbs and proteins are 4 calories per gram. Fats are 9 calories per gram. So fats are the champs in terms of energy density. And so they're a good energy source. And Pam will be talking about when to eat these meals with an emphasis on fats are good at dinner time, because fats take a long time to metabolize. And so if you eat dinner and then hopefully you're at rest overnight, and then you can metabolize those fats overnight. So, and you can see some examples. Olive oil. I love olive oil. You have to be very careful with it because Your sleeping bag doesn't like olive oil so much, so you have to be very careful it doesn't leak in your pack. But nuts and nut butters, cheese, and there's Fritos. All of us long distance hikers love Fritos. So anyway, those are the components of a balanced diet. Remember, what we're after energy dense food, and we're shooting for a minimum of 4 calories per gram, 5's better, et cetera, et cetera. So when you get a chance, start looking at, if you haven't done this before, start looking at food. Look at walnuts, 6.7 calories per gram. That's a really good high energy food. It's got good fats in it. A lot of good things with walnuts. A lot of people use the tuna packages with the little tuna salad. I don't carry them anymore because their calories per gram is down a little less than 2 calories per gram. And so there's better ways to get protein, because again, what you're looking for is the most calories you can get per gram of the food that you're packing, with the right nutrition balance, all with the proviso, you have to eat the stuff. So make sure that you're bringing food, and the way you make sure is you try it before you leave home. Okay, so Pam, I think it's back to you.
Yeah, I will I totally agree with Tom when he's talking about like trying stuff. I used to love experimenting on the trail. This is a terrible idea. I would like leave stuff in resupply boxes and buy other things. Just yeah, try stuff at home. And also like when you're out there, especially on strenuous trips or ITA trips, like the mindset really is to like, eat to fuel yourself, not like I get to eat crappy because I'm working really hard and I'm just going to burn it off. That's not going to do you any favors. Now, that being said, I probably eat more like bad stuff when I'm hiking, but it's still like, it might be like at the end of the day, I eat a bag of peanut M&Ms because I love them. And it's also a good bump of fat at the end of the day. But also think about like, what do you normally eat at home? If you go to like the opposite spectrum of that, when you go out for a big strenuous hike, like your body has to make some kind of a transition. And for some people, it's a hard transition if you're going from eating in one way to another. I even struggle a little bit because, at home I eat a lot of like fresh stuff. And so like fiber is pretty high. And even when I'm eating like dehydrated vegetables and stuff like that, like I know I'm not getting the same amount of fiber usually. And there's an effect to that. And it's just something that you have to deal with. I guess you kind of know your body. So like Tom said, like be sure to just use this information as a guideline. I know already like what my macros are for my day to day. I'm sure there's other people on this who also do some kind of tracking in their life. I kind of stick to something like this when I'm out there, which is way different like macro percentages than I would at home, but I know that it works for me. I also would say when it comes to calories, for some people seeing like 3,000, 4,000 plus calories could also be like a huge difference from what they're eating at home. And so, especially if it's something over time, especially if it's longer than a week, I will kind of gradually get up to what I need. But a lot of times, like Tom said too, when I'm working really hard and doing big hikes, I will lose my appetite. And it's really hard to get in all those calories. And I just know that. For some people, their hiker hunger comes on quickly. For some people, it does not. I learned it takes me about 5 weeks for my hunger to come back, which is kind of crazy. For other people, it's much more quickly. And you think it would be the opposite, right? Like you're out there working so hard, your body would be so hungry, but I don't know what happens. So yeah, I know that there's also things I eat at home. I regularly eat nut butter at home. I rarely eat it on the trail because for some reason, the like idea of swallowing nut butter out there just seems like too much work or something. So, so you just will learn these things over time. Um, so something else that's really important to be thinking about when you're out there is hydration. Water, water, water. Stay hydrated. Obviously, it's possible to overhydrate, so don't do that, but do try and drink before you're thirsty. So I I like to still carry a camelback or like a bladder with a hose, because then as I'm hiking along, I will just sip on my hose. I found that I'm too lazy to pull the bottle out of my side pocket to drink without stopping, and so I just wouldn't drink for like an hour. So, I still do that. If you're especially like hard, sweaty hikes, hard, sweaty trail projects, adding electrolyte supplements can be a really good idea. So you make sure that you're having all of those salts and minerals that you need while you're out there. And one thing that I have learned is when I'm struggling to eat, liquid calories are invaluable. So if you Google protein shakes or trail smoothies or anything like that, there's tons of recipes out there where you can get a huge bang for your buck by just drinking something that has some calories in it. That could be used as a snack replacement or like a bump at the end of the day or something, just so you're making sure that you're getting kind of topped off. So just talking a little bit about timing. So the idea is while you're hiking, while you're working, you want to stay fueled to avoid hitting the wall. And if I'm sure everyone has had that experience hitting the wall. I actually have a little bit of a tell my stomach. It doesn't growl, but it like makes noises like it's empty, and I breathe and it squishes around. And I'm like, my stomach is literally empty. This is why my trail name is Fuel Gauge, because that's when I know my tank is empty. I got to stop and have a snack. And so other symptoms of hitting the wall is it's like your energy just goes, and you're just like, I don't feel like I can walk anymore. I've had some people say when they hit the wall that they actually start seeing spots. And I would say that's actually beyond hitting the wall. Like if you're seeing spots, like you've hit the wall. You really need to stop. And I know sometimes people are just like, I just need to keep going. I'm almost to the summit trailhead camp spot, but it's so important. And so one of the things that you could do, so you know, all day long kind of be eating, but one thing you can do is in a um like a harness pouch or a little like fanny pack or something, just have little snacks in there. Get some of those simple carbs in there, little candies, dried fruits, fruit snacks, you know, have a caloric drink mix or something, or a little bar. Just like if you don't want to stop moving, just have something easy that you can take out of a little pouch and put in your mouth. So
Pam,
when to eat, yeah, go ahead,
Pam,
Tom. Yeah,
Pam, they also make some really nifty energy bars nowadays that have the simple carbs and the complex carbs.
yeah,
Because as we talked earlier, the thing you really want to avoid is that glycemic crash.
yeah.
And so when you have the simple carbs, make sure you're also getting some complex carbs. And again, you can combine things.
Yeah,
Uh, but I really second what Pam is saying about you really need to eat all day. Just stay fueled.
yeah, yeah. So like when we're out on projects, I just like task everybody with watching everybody and being like, hey, we should stop and have a snack, or you look like you could have a drink of water or something. On the bar thing, I have a really hard time. I see people out with protein bars. I feel like protein bars are not the greatest thing for like endurance, hiking and stuff. That ratio is not there. And for some reason for me, they sit really heavy, like right here, like in the mid, like at the very top of my stomach. It's the weirdest feeling. I feel like my body's just kind of rejects it. It just sits there in a ball. And so I wouldn't necessarily recommend protein bars for protein out there, but like in the mornings or something, I might put a little protein powder in my cereal or something if I want to augment that a little bit, but the protein bars seem to be a little too much for those exercises. So just thinking a little bit about like where you can strategize to have like your optimal day. Like Tom was talking about, having a good carb bump at breakfast with both those simple and complex carbs, to kind of get you going. And Tom was saying yesterday, it's like he'll have his breakfast before he tears stuff down. So he eats and then he has a little bit of time before he really gets going. So it gives those carbs a chance to kind of kick in, the energy to kind of kick in. Obviously during the day, eating. Then when you get back at the end of the day, there's lots of these recovery drinks now. You can buy them anywhere. And those can be a really good idea. I think some of them are like flavors that can be kind of refreshing. And so have your recovery drink cocktail at the end of the day. Protein bumps at the end of the day are really good for that, like muscle recovery. And for me, especially if it's a cold night, I want to have a fat bump because that will help me like make it through the night without getting cold. At least this is what I tell myself. Like, I think this works. I think that if I have some like trail mix or something before I go to bed, like I don't get as cold. I really think this actually works. But anything else you want to add on the timing, Tom?
No, I think you hit the key points. Again, remember, you're going to be eating all day. So after you get that carb bump, that carb bump's going to last about 3 hours. And so it will really start kicking in an hour and a half. And then by that third hour, you're really, the glycogen's been pretty well used up. So you better start refueling, because again, with the simple carbs, takes about a half an hour to get it in the system. With the complex carbs, an hour to an hour and a half. Just keep eating all day long.
Yep. All right, so now the part that I really start to geek out about. I love, like, half of the fun for me for going on long trips is like planning everything. And I love doing spreadsheets and like doing calculations and finding fun recipes to do. I like to make a lot of my like breakfasts and dinners, or maybe some of my lunches and stuff. So spend a lot of the off season dehydrating things and Googling for the best price for my different ingredients, things like that. Some of you might be like, what? Why? This sounds overkill for a trip. But I think it's also like just a good way to learn. And it's also like a good way for you to like get in the idea of like, like good data can be really helpful, because who knows what happens later where you end up going on a 3-week project or a month-long backpack. Like, you'll have some information about what is working for you, what isn't working for you. And just like tracking or doing anything, like at first it seems kind of hard and painful, but once you start doing it, you start to get an idea. And when you get in the habit of looking at nutrition labels, like things will just start clicking. And so it's just a good practice to get into. And again, like if you want to like optimize your experience, really, kind of being like thoughtful about your approach to food can be really advantageous. Now, I know
We just have to provide a warning though, Pam, because when my wife and I go in the food store now, she'll come walking along. She said, "You're reading the nutrition labels again. How many calories per gram does that stuff has?" Yes. And I didn't realize how alike Pam and I are until we started working on this food thing. And I do exactly the same thing, but I second what Pam said. It's actually a lot of fun. Mm-hmm. And the things you're going to learn will amaze you, because I mean, how many people on this webinar, watching this webinar, use instant oatmeal? And when you use instant oatmeal, you have to have hot water, right? So that takes some fuel. And then when you start looking at the numbers, you realize that instant oatmeal is down around a 3, where the granola is up at a 5.5 calories per gram, and it doesn't take hot water. So you learn a lot. And it is actually a fun part of the experience.
Yeah. Yeah, sometimes I get really disappointed where I'm like, oh, that looks so good. And I flip it over and look and I'm like, but not worth it. Not for this trip, not worth it. Yeah, so thinking about your meal plan, thinking about what you're gonna buy. I know that like sometimes I'll like look for different sales. So for example, like I don't really do a lot of dehydrated like store-bought backpacker meals, but sometimes I do as like a treat, and I will buy them during like Black Friday or Cyber Monday sales, so I like get a discount and then use them the next season or something. You know, just some ideas there. Yeah, and again, experiment and try stuff in the off season. So here's just a screenshot of like a spreadsheet that I use to help plan my meals. And this came from the Backcountry Foodie site. And it's really awesome because if you go to Backcountry Foodie's site, she has a ton of great free information. But with the paid service, you get so much more. And some of that is tools like this, but other things are recipes. And they're really like fairly easy recipes. Like a lot of this stuff you could buy at your local store or dehydrate yourself or whatever. And it's really just like add this, this, and this, and then put it together. And on these spreadsheets, it's like it already has her meals built in. And so you just pick it from the list and it fills in all of the macro information for you, which is pretty cool. Otherwise you can just add it in yourself. But, you know, like here I'm looking at those, you know, calories per ounce instead of gram, but like how much it weighs, because you also want to just like keep your weight for your food down as much as possible. Calories, protein, carbs, fiber, sugar, fat, and then I added that carb to protein. So again, shooting for that like three or 4 grams of carb per 1 gram of protein. So for prep, one thing I highly recommend is repackaging bulky items. It seems like some of those backpacker meals are getting better about having a less packaging, but some of them are pretty bulky. There's nothing wrong with taking those and putting them into like a Ziploc baggie, and just make sure like you write instructions on there, like how much water to add or how long it needs to sit or anything like that. I always like, I like to take the guesswork out of my meal prep. And so I actually number stuff. So it's like all of these things are for day 1, all of these things are for day 2. And then I put it in my food bag stacked like that. Other people are like, they don't get that crazy with the organization. But for me, it's just like one less thing I have to think about out there. I just reach in my bag and I grab all the 2s and like, that's what I know I'm eating that day.
One other
Yeah,
thing, Pam,
yeah,
that
go
you
ahead.
had mentioned when we were talking is that, and I do the same thing, is that every day to get to that number of calories, and Pam, I think your sheet was 3,000 calories. To get to that, you're going to have to eat a lot of food. So take your snacks that you're going to be eating all day, put them in a Ziploc bag. Like I do the same thing. I mix up some trail mix and I put it in a little baggie, and I know that's what I'm supposed to eat this morning. And so by the time you're getting to the noon hour, you know that you're supposed to have eaten that ration. We used to have a thing in the climbing community called fair share. And if you got at the end of the day and you hadn't eaten all of your rations, well, you had to eat it before you could go to bed. So the idea is if you bring it, eat it.
Yeah. Yeah. And you can see on the spreadsheet here, like there's like 6 meals in there. And that's, you know, like you're just really kind of eating every hour or 2. Yeah, so, you know, things you might need if you're prepping stuff is, you know, kitchen scale is super helpful, obviously measuring things. Ziploc bags. I prefer freezer bags over the sandwich bags because they're stronger, and like I've had bags rip open from granola or something. I know there's also some like other options out there now. Backcountry Foodie Aaron now sometimes uses these paper packets. If you want to do paper instead of plastic, you know, there's lots of different, if I have to do prep food for a long time, I will put them in like a regular baggie, but then I'll put a bunch of them in like a vacuum sealer and seal it up so that you're also helping with that kind of like staying a little bit fresher. Yeah.
And those vacuum sealer bags are tough.
Yeah,
I mean,
and they're super tough, but they do take up a little bit more. I mean, at least in my case, they take up a little more room because they've got a little extra, and also they're not very flexible. And so one year I did try to just use those, and I feel like I was like not utilizing all the space in my food bag. And so that's when I started just putting them in the Ziploc bags. And then if I was sending myself food, put them in the vacuum sealer, but then when I got the box, take it out of the vacuum seal and stuff the bags in my food bag seemed to be kind of work better. But yeah, you'll all learn trial and error what works what works best for you. Yeah, so we're getting close to wrapping up here. Just wanted to put those resources out there. You can Google these. These are the kind of top two, but there is a ton of information about nutrition for hiking, recipes. There's books you can buy. Tom and I love to talk about this stuff, so you're always welcome to contact us. Bulk bins are awesome for this kind of stuff. So the next time you're in a store that has bulk bins, just go see what they have, so you know. And for those who live in a place that has Winco is amazing. They have all sorts of great stuff, and it could be everything from, you know, the pastas to like another way to a great way to add fat is that shelf stable Parmesan cheese. I put that on like everything. They have like soup mixes, textured vegetable protein, you know, all kinds of great stuff. Amazon, of course, is great. I think Trader Joe's has pretty reasonable prices for things like dried fruits and nuts. Yeah, the next time you're at a gas station, just grab some hot sauce packets or some mayo packets, those for your trip. Like you'll start thinking differently about this. Every time you eat out, you're just like, oh, I'm going to keep this little salt and pepper packet, put it in my backpacking kit or whatever. And sometimes I've also found like discount backpacker meals on some of the just regular discount outdoor gear sites like Moose Jaw, Camp Saver, Steep and Cheap. And if you're into the DIY thing, these are some of my go-tos for different recipes. And I might just leave this up, but that's kind of the end. And Tom, is there anything else you want to add before we start taking some questions?
No, let's take questions and see where we created confusion.
Yes. Let's see here. I'm trying to see how they're. So if people have questions, if you want to put it in the chat, I believe that's possible.
Yeah, Kelly was going to open that at the end of the presentation. So Kelly, if you could go ahead and do that, that'd be great.
Yep, it's open.
All right.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Would you guys be willing to each like give like your favorite go-to like a dinner that's like would replace what you would like normally get if you're gonna get like a backpacker meal? What's like your favorite go-to?
You mean what's our favorite backpacker dinner?
Instead of buying one, if you could explain how you would put one together from instead of just going out and buying a, you know, standard prepackaged backpacking meal. I'd love to hear like one of your recipes for making
Go ahead, Pam.
Yeah, so for the most part, it's like you know, I do like a carb, a protein, some vegetables, and spices. So for example, my absolute favorite, I call it Cheese-O-Rama. and it's a packet of ramen without the spice mix, and then it's powdered cheddar cheese, dehydrated canned chicken, and dehydrated broccoli. And so I sometimes cold soak that. I usually heat that up because it's just meshes better. So then you just add hot water to that and let it soak. That maybe takes 10 or 15 minutes, and then it's ready to eat. I also love quinoa, and if you cook quinoa and then put it on your dehydrator, it will cook really quickly out there. And so, like, you know, I'll do like quinoa and like maybe some ground turkey and some like curry flavors, and then add some like, you know, dehydrated red peppers and onions or something, and some cashews for a little bit of good fat or something like that. Or like you could do a backcountry spaghetti, you could do a backcountry like Mexi rice thing. I like to get dehydrated beans and like freeze-dried cheese, put a little hot water, and that's like a bean dip. That's where those Fritos come in handy. Or your Frito dust if it turns into Frito, or tortillas, or you just, you know, put that on a tortilla or something. That's a good dinner.
Kelly, you don't realize what a door you've opened here,
Oh yeah.
because
It's fun,
Pam,
but
I said
Pam
one.
has a whole gazillion and a half of these recipes, and they're great. I'll answer the question. I don't put together a backpacking entree. I go buy them, because generally I don't like to cook. And what I can tell people is that a new brand that I really like is Peak Refuel. And I just was on a trail project with ITA, and I had their cheesy chicken and broccoli, and it was outstanding. Peak Refuel makes a great dinner. And if you put some crackers in with it, get you right about that 4-to-1 carb to protein ratio. Really good.
yeah.
So check out Peak. If you do the dinners, check out Peak Refuel. We have a question here. If losing weight's a personal goal, where, when is the best place to trim?
So trimming, are you talking about trimming on calories or trimming?
Or talking about you losing weight on your body?
Yeah. So I guess I would say all personal choice, but like to optimize your experience, I would say like going on a backpacking trip to lose weight is
Bad idea.
maybe not the best experience for you because you're just going to be really hungry. Yeah. And so, you know, anytime you have a deficit, right, you're potentially going to lose some weight. But if you're doing strenuous activity and you're not giving yourself the fuel it needs, you're also putting yourself at risk. You're putting yourself at risk of, you know, passing out or just like not being able to have the experience you want. So, I mean, for me, I don't know if like going on a backpacking trip to lose weight, unless like, if that's your goal, it's just gonna be it's not going to be fun. I don't think it'll be, I think it'll be hard, and your body will not be happy about it.
Yep, don't do it. And Pam hit the key issue, and that is that you know, I worked in search and rescue for a number of years, and have been on hundreds of backcountry trips, and have had people that haven't been eating the right kinds of food and enough food, and literally got close to passing out. And so it's not the right time to do it. So that's the interesting thing about backpacking. If you're trying to lose weight at home, this is the absolute reverse of that, because you're trying to maximize calories for the weight that you're carrying. So the things you felt guilty about eating at home, you don't feel guilty. In fact, you get to think, oh boy, look at this. I get to eat this wonderful thing and I don't have to worry about it. So that's why come on out on an ITA backpacking trip and you can eat whatever you want. And so that's we hadn't thought of that, Pam, another advantage of a
Yeah.
backpacking trip.
Yeah, and really, like, for a lot of people, I think it's generally fairly hard to actually eat like all of the calories you would need anyways. So I think even if you feel like you're eating a lot and you're fueling your body so you feel good, you may walk away a little bit lighter just because when you're working hard, it sometimes is hard to keep up with the food. And like for me, and you know, a lot of people, I kind of lose my appetite and I really have to focus on making sure I am getting enough calories so that I don't just feel really crappy, you know.
Ray mentioned Packet Gourmet has
Ooh,
some great stuff, and they do, Ray, I use them. They provide a lot of the basic stuff. You can get prepared meals, or you can get the components that go in the meals. So yeah, that's a good site, Packet Gourmet. I think they're down in Texas.
yeah. Yeah, and for those who are potentially interested in the DIY stuff, just to give you an idea of like, you know, how much is involved with that. I think the thing that seems to take the most time for me is the dehydration stuff. And really it's just like getting it on the dehydrator and letting it go like over and over and over again. I feel like I like to do that and then, you know, order my other ingredients. And then I'll just spend a couple hours on a day and have it all sitting on my kitchen table and just put them all together. And then in a couple hours, I mean, I have everything I need. And, you know, I've done meals for weeks and weeks. And once I have everything dehydrated and all the ingredients, I could box up 2 months worth of food in a weekend. It's
One,
really,
one other thing, and just Thomas, just before we get to your question about can we email you out the links to this, the answer is yes. But before we get to that, Pam, can you go back one slide to the one that had the Gear Skeptic on it?
yeah.
Yeah, there's Gear Skeptic. If you want to see an absolutely amazing thing, he has YouTube videos. Go to Gear Skeptic YouTube and go to the food chart 2. He has a second version of the food chart. There's hundreds and hundreds of food items in there, and it will show you the ratio of carbs to protein. It'll give you all of the information that comes off of the nutrition label, give you a bunch of calculated stuff. And he also then has a free planning tool that you can load those things into and come up with your meal plan. Again, one of our volunteers on the wilderness immersion trip alerted us to this Gear Skeptic. And my only complaint is I've now spent hours and hours of looking at this guy's hands because he doesn't show his face, he shows his hands moving around. But he has great information. So if you haven't seen it, I'd recommend you go look at it. It's fantastic. So Kelly, we will send this out, won't we?
Yep. I'll send all the resources out to everybody and a copy of the presentation.
Yeah, and are we still loading the presentations on our YouTube channel?
Yes, we are.
Yeah. Yeah, so for those of you who are maybe new or don't know, we do have a YouTube channel and all the recorded webinars can go there. And if you go and you're like become a follower or subscriber, you'll get an alert when a new thing has been added.
Any other questions?
Oh,
I have an answer to that one. You go ahead, Pam.
yeah, I haven't had a problem with them generally. I usually buy these in different places, and so I really just look for like the number I'm looking for, but I forget what the ones are called locally that I really like them, but it's like almost like a mom and pop shop, and I don't remember what the name of them are.
So Ray, what you need to do is go to that Gear Skeptic again, look at his food chart, look at the food value, the calories per gram on tortillas, and what you're going to do is leave them home because it's pretty low. So what I do is I go and buy, I don't know if you guys can see this, but I go buy Penn racket balls and I save the tube, and then I load Ritz crackers in the tube. And I use Ritz crackers for peanut butter and for sausage, and I've been known to put a couple of sardines on a Ritz cracker too. And but they have a much higher calories per gram. And so what I've because I do really long trips where I don't come out like a month. And what I find is the tortillas don't keep well, and they're just not strong enough when I'm pushing them in the backpack. And that's why I put the crackers in the tube.
It's a good idea. Christy says, do you guys share info and events on Instagram? Yes. Kelly, yes, right?
Yes. Yes, we do. Idaho Trails Association, I think, is our handle.
Yeah. Well, I'm
And
glad that you randomly learned about us.
yeah, so Christy, if you're in Spokane, we'd love to see you on a project. We have 19 projects in northern Idaho this year. Sorry, Kelly, I just had to get that commercial in there.
That's fine. Please feel free.
Yeah, there's an idea about the mini tortillas, and I've tried those as well. The thing you'll get, you know, I get pretty restrictive about what I take based on calories per gram. But if you like tortillas and you'll eat them, bring them.
Yeah. Yeah, and I'll use tortillas as like a mechanism for getting food in. I really like them with these like bean stuff that I make. The mini tortillas, that's a great idea. I haven't tried those.
Okay.
Hey, well, it is 8 o'clock, so we'll let you all get back to your evening. We appreciate you joining us. If you have, you know, any follow-up questions, you're laying awake at night just dreaming about all of your backpack adventure planning, you can send us an email at kellys@trails@idahotrailsassociation.org, and it'll get to me or Tom. Yeah, thanks for being here.
You bet. We hope you enjoyed it and you learned something.